Hello everyone, and welcome to the Homepage Network. I'm Rhonda Pearson. On Wednesday, August 15th, the Wellsboro Gazette hosted an education panel. This was an opportunity to discuss the future of education for our region, with a focus on understanding the positions of our two state representative candidates for the 68 district. The event was held at the Dean Center and opened with an introduction by Josh Magnotta of the Wellsboro Gazette. After hearing comments from a number of the panelists regarding education, our candidates Carrie Heath and Clint Owlett stated their positions and responded to the community questions prompted by moderator William Hebe.
Hi, thank everybody for coming out tonight. I think it's very important that we cover education as a topic at one of these forums. We did 7 of them in a marathon in the spring, and only got about 3 questions that were related to education. And it's a subject that touches everybody's lives in the entire district. So I'm glad that we are able to have a forum that's specifically focused on education and the issues surrounding it. If you don't know, I am a special education teacher at Wellsboro High School. This is my 12th year of teaching now. I have taught a self-contained autistic support classroom. I have done counseling for teenagers with emotional behavioral disabilities. I am currently doing learning support, which is slightly less challenging, but it has its own challenges. I am a living example of how education can be an equalizer. So I come from not a very wealthy background, to put it mildly, and I was able, through my intelligence and my hard work, to get a scholarship to an excellent college and to be able to learn the skills to come back to my community and make an impact and a difference in my community. So I am here as an example of what education can do for a person and how it's an incredibly vital part of our democracy. If you have not gotten one yet, I do have pamphlets. My information is in the back there. If you have one, you'll see in it my basic platform. There are 3 planks to it. One is a career and technical education center, what used to be called a VOTEC high school. We do not have one at all in Tioga County. And just to remind everyone, the 68th district is not just Tioga County. It also includes the western third of Bradford County and Gailton and the surrounding area in Potter County. So my hope would be that if we were able to get a career and tech center in this area, that it would be able to serve all of the students of the 68th district, although that is a little bit tricky crossing county lines. So just don't tell me it's impossible. So that's my number 1 plank on my platform. Second plank is infrastructure. And a lot of times we talk about roads and bridges, but what we really need to focus on as well is modern infrastructure. So cell phone service and high-speed broadband internet. And that may not seem to have a whole heck of a lot to do with education, but it really does. If you're a student who lives in an area where your only access to the internet is through the satellite, which is some of our students in this area, and it is unreliable, or there are certain companies that are somewhat unreliable in this area, that can really impact your ability to complete your work. And it's not just kind of a typical homework assignment. You might think of doing some research. There are these amazing tools out there. If you're interested in auto mechanics, you can look at the engine of a vehicle online and explode it and look at all the different parts and see how they all go together. But if you have slow internet speed, you can't do that. Those images won't download quickly enough for you to be able to do that. So the infrastructure piece ties into education overall. The third part of my platform is mental health services. This is something that I have dealt with on many different levels in my life as a teacher, as a counselor, as an individual. So I think that we need to really focus on bringing good mental health services to our students, and that we need to, as Sue was saying, we need to look at the whole picture. We need to look at the family structure, and we need to start early. And we need to use those interventions that have data to show that they actually work. So as a special ed teacher, I do things that you might be looking at me and thinking, well, what qualifications does she have to be a representative? So let me explain some of the things that I do. I have to be able to read law. There's a lot of law involved in special education. I have to be able to read it and correctly interpret it and make sure that I'm applying it correctly in the given situation with the student that I'm working with at the time. I have to do a lot of public speaking. Thankfully, that makes this not quite so difficult. I am a little bit more used to this, so that is definitely something that you need to be able to do as a representative, to speak well in public. As a special education teacher, what you do is you look at the situation in front of you, you look at the particular student, what their skills are, what their needs are, and you come up with a set of goals. And then you take where they are right now, the goal that you want them to be at, and you break it down step by step. How do we get from here to there? To me, that's exactly what a legislator should do. We should look at whatever the problems are currently in the community, figure out the goal, the solution that we want to get to, and break it down step by step, get from here to there. And something else that always happens in special ed is that most things don't work out quite the way that you think they will, right? There are always obstacles and things that come up. And you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to change your plans. You have to be willing to compromise. You have to sometimes change the goal. And I think that that's something that we don't see a lot in our representatives. There's kind of this hard-headedness of my side, your side, and never coming together in between. And I think the majority of people are somewhere in between. So I hope to represent all of us in Harrisburg. And hopefully you'll learn more about where I stand on the issues tonight. If you have any further questions at the end, I'll be glad to talk to anyone. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, thank you, Bill, so much for taking the time to be here tonight and helping us out with this. A little bit about me. I grew up in Middlebury and grew up on a dairy farm. Our family had a small business, and I was able to also, in the most recent years, be able to start my own business. And I served at a camp with teenagers for 9 years. That was an adventure, and enjoyed every minute of it, and really learned what it means to be a servant there. June 5th, I was sworn in as a representative and a member of the House, and that was a special day to be able to raise your hand and say, you know, I'm going to defend the Constitution. And I want to thank those that sent me there, and I'm looking forward to having that opportunity again, should you choose to vote me in November again. But I'm super excited to be here tonight with this panel, talking about education, school safety, and the opioid crisis that's crippling our nation and our communities. We are facing challenges here like we've never seen, and it's a serious issue. We have a tax issue with our property tax, to where it almost feels like we're renting our property from the government. Our schools are underfunded, and we have to fight for every single dollar as a rural community. We have a state that doesn't recognize the challenges, the unique challenges that we have in our rural communities. The mental health crisis has us all on edge, and our families are being tempted and pulled into addictions every day. And that's been hard to watch. Folks have been coming into my office, and that's been hard. None of these challenges are partisan issues. They don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. We owe our kids a solid education in a safe location. And the addictions that have taken our communities hostage need to stop. And our seniors and our farmers need to feel like they own their property, not renting it from the government. I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight because I want to be a part of solutions. And we have a great panel here tonight to be a part of solutions, and that's why we're here. I don't want to be a know-it-all representative at all. There's plenty of those in Harrisburg. Trust me, I've met a few of them. You'll never get anywhere in Harrisburg as a know-it-all. And that's why I'm here to talk tonight and to listen. And I've been talking to parents, superintendents, families, and teachers along the way about the strengths and weaknesses in our education and how we can make our schools a safer place for all of our kids. I personally can't know it all, and I just want you to know that I want to know the right people and have the right people in the room to have the conversations that we need to have. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on career paths tonight Eric kind of introduced that a little bit. It's a great opportunity, not only for our schools and our students, but also for our businesses. I've actually had the opportunity to tour several manufacturing facilities and small businesses. And this whole idea could be a game changer for our schools, our students. Imagine students graduating with multiple job opportunities, great benefits, and a 401k plan, and no debt. Imagine that. How cool would that be? And that could happen, and we could be showing the rest of the state what that looks like right here in our communities. And I'm super excited to jump in and what everybody's already working at. Thanks for the seat at the table. I am looking forward to hearing your concerns as parents and teachers about school safety. The future of school safety and law enforcement training could be right here in our backyard with what Scott's doing at the university. I've been able to meet with them a couple times and go to some meetings with Tom Marino, and it's super exciting what's happening here, and we need to back these guys on that. Sheriff Lewandowski and I have been able to team up and do the National Night Out. You shared a little bit about that. That was super. Did you guys know we were in the dunk tank? Both. I guarantee we were probably the first sheriff. Frank was probably the first sheriff ever in a dunk tank in Tioga County, and I'm sure Matt Baker never got in the dunk tank. But I did, and it was awesome. But that's the kind of unity that we need in our communities. We're normal people, and we love our kids, and we love our community. And we're trying to build relationships with law enforcement and first responders with our kids. So it was a great first step, and I'm looking forward to doing that again. We're here to learn tonight from each other. Tonight is not about me, and it's not about Carrie. Tonight is about our kids and making sure that we have good opportunities for them in safe schools right here in the 68th District. So I'm looking forward to any questions that you might have, and we have a great panel here, and that's why we have a panel here, is we want to have the right people at the table because these are not partisan issues. We owe it to our kids to have a safe place and the best education possible right here in our rural communities. So thank you. Thank you.
We'll hear more from our candidates after the break. Stay with us.
Home is where your heart is. If you're dreaming of finding the perfect home, First Citizens Community Bank has the people and products to make it happen. We offer a range of down payment options, as well as options for different income levels. So whatever your situation, don't count yourself out. Our expert lenders make mortgages simple. We'll put our experience to work to find the right mortgage for your budget and lifestyle. You need solutions. That's what we deliver. First Citizens Community Bank. Your mortgage, your way.
We're going to begin with Carrie Heath. Carrie, the first question is as follows. Where did you attend K to 12th grade school? Who was your favorite teacher and why?
Okay, so my first school was Charlotte Lopla Elementary here in Wellsboro. My mom actually moved around a lot, so I attended quite a few different schools. The one I was at the longest was J. Frank Dobie Elementary in Dallas, Texas, and then I graduated from Loyalsock Township High School. My favorite teacher, can I do two?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, so elementary school, Mrs. Myra Woodbury was wonderful. She was amazing. And she had this section of her room that had all these craft supplies. So if you finished early, you could go over and you could do like whatever little artsy crafty thing you wanted to do. So she was definitely a favorite of mine because she really pushed the idea that your education isn't done when the lesson is finished, right? You can keep going. And then when I was in high school, I had Mr. Wayne Moffitt for my English teacher and then also for speech and drama. So thank you, Mr. Moffitt, for the public speaking skills. And Mr. Moffitt was wonderful because he was constantly challenging myself and every other student. And I loved the way that he set up his class. So he set it up that you could sign a contract for whatever grade you wanted. So if you wanted a C, you did this much. If you wanted a B, you did this much. If you wanted an A, you did this much. And if you didn't meet all the requirements on your contract, you got the next lower grade down, right? Depending on how much you got done. So he really made it a matter of personal responsibility, what you got. So those are my favorite teachers.
Thank you. Mr. Owlett, same question.
I actually went to Wellsboro for my kindergarten class, and then my parents switched my brother and I to New Covenant Academy, and it was a huge sacrifice for them as dairy farmers, and that's where I then got to do kindergarten over again, because I was an August birthday, and I must not have been able to color in the lines, I'm not sure, but so I got to do it again, and graduated from New Covenant, like I said, it was a big sacrifice, and I just want to thank my dad and mom for that. It was great. My favorite teacher was Dr. Ira Heineman. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a photographer out here in Stony Fork. He taught at New Covenant a few years after he had stepped out of the university, and I really liked him because he taught from the professor standpoint, and it was great. I mean, it was more of a conversation-based education, and I loved it, and that was perfect for me. And he also taught photography, which was really cool to be able to do that with him. My favorite class of his was obviously government, surprise. And one of my favorite activities that we did a mock debate. This was when Bush was running against Gore. And do you guys remember the lockbox thing where we were going to put all this Social Security money? And remember that? That was when that was happening. And we did a mock debate. I actually got to be Bush, and one of my buddies was Gore. And we had to learn all the parts of what their platform, was and everything. And it was super exciting. He put us in front of the whole school, and we had to debate. And it was great. So yeah, Dr. Heineman was definitely my favorite teacher. So thanks.
Scott Wagner is on record saying that we could cut 10% of teachers and no one would ever notice. He has also said that retired teachers should return some of their pension money since they're receiving too much money and pensions are too large. If he is elected governor, will you support or oppose those particular views?
That's a great question. When I got that question, I reached out, and I had actually heard about this statement. And it's interesting how the governor's race comes everywhere in the state and becomes all of our races. But I did reach out to his campaign for some clarification on that, because I wanted to know what, if I'm defending him, I need to know. And basically, what has happened here is we're talking about politics and misrepresentation from what his campaign is talking about. I was told that in a 2015 interview, he was asked about the challenges of our education system. And he referenced the Jack Welch business principle. And what that means is if you have a challenging budget or a challenging business and things aren't going well, you look at your business and you find what 10% need to be changed or eliminated from your business, and then you replace that. That's what's left out in this comment, is you replace that with 10% of your strengths. So that's what he was referring to in that. There in no way, shape, or form is Scott Wagner going to eliminate 10% of the teachers. So you can just rest assured that's not going to happen. So I'm not going to have to vote on that, which is good. So this proposal is going nowhere. In fact, the Wolf campaign actually pointed out that in an article in the Associated Press that they really don't actually have a proposal from him, and it's not going to come. So we don't have to worry about voting on that. So that's good. So thanks.
Ms. Heath?
Okay, so we could lose 10% of our teachers and it wouldn't affect anything. We've already had that happen here, in case you're not aware of that. There are approximately 1,000 school district employees in the district, in the 68th district. And we've lost around 100 people in the last 10 years or so because of the extreme budget cuts from Harrisburg. So that's about a 10% reduction. Some of that came from retirements, people who were not replaced after they were retired. We know exactly what that looks like. What that looks like is cutting back art and music in elementary schools, losing librarians, losing programs like driver's education, and losing vocational programs like computer-aided drafting. So these are, even though it may have been misinterpreted, this is something that we actually are very aware of as teachers, the fact that the budget is tight and that when it gets tighter, we lose things for our children. So hopefully we don't have a governor in office who thinks that education is something that can just be kind of thrown aside. And as far as, sorry, one more thing. I forgot about the pension. My other grandmother, my Grandma Baker, worked as the commissioner for the secretary for the county commissioners, excuse me, for 30 years. So she also earned a pension. And that's what's paying for her stay at the Green Home right now. So when you say that someone should have money that they've earned taken away from them in their retirement, I get a little bit offended by that. And I think all of you should too.
Thank you. Any rebuttal, Mr. Owlett?
Sure. I didn't talk about the pensions thing. I apologize for that.
Sure, that's fine.
So I can use my 1 minute for that?
Yes.
Okay. We do have a pension problem that's probably going to come up in some other questions, which is great, because I'd like to be able to talk more than 1 minute about that. We could probably talk for 20 minutes about that. But Scott realizes that we have a pension problem. There's actually some new formulas that are going to be happening on January 1st, which I'm really super excited about. And one of those is the new formula for state employees, and it's the 401k style, which is going to be a great addition, or it's going to be a huge thing in the long term for our schools. And Scott's pushing that. So Scott's going to work on the pension system. We got to work on that. We got to reform it. But we're not going to take, I'm personally not going to vote for anything that's going to take away from what we've committed to our employees. That's important to me. So thanks.
Thank you. School funding. We have a number of questions on school funding. This question comes from the audience. We know a good education is necessary for our children to grow and secure good jobs. How do we meet the educational needs of rural students when our tax base is decreasing and funding from the state is being decreased?
It's going to take somebody that's going to fight for our communities. That's what it's going to take. Funding for our rural schools continues to drop. John's right. I mean, Doug, you're right. I mean, it's a challenge. It's a challenge that we face every day. We increase the spending, but it's just enough to cover pensions and rising healthcare costs, so schools end up with a few $1,000s to work with. So what do they have to do? They have to raise property taxes to be able to make up for the other increases, and that's not good for anybody. What it's going to take is somebody that stands up for what's right and makes sure that Harrisburg does not forget about north central Pennsylvania. It's hard to get any resources or any attention north of Route 80. And it's going to take a representative who knows how to fight for it and make sure that we are not forgotten. Because that's what happens a lot. And I've noticed it. I've seen it in Harrisburg. I've talked with representatives that said, oh, funding's way out of balance and we got to get our rural schools back on track. They've been overfunded for years. I'm like, I had that conversation this week with a representative, and I was like, I don't think you know what you're talking about. And so it's going to be someone that can stand up to that wave going through Harrisburg, and that's what it's going to take. So I want to be that guy, and I've been doing that, and I'm going to continue to fight for as much funding as we possibly can get.
Gary Heath.
Clint's right on that one. You need somebody who will fight. And again, I'm a special education teacher. I fight for the kids who are overlooked, for the kids that people don't pay attention to. So that's something that I'm very used to doing, being an advocate for underserved communities. We also need to vote for other representatives who value education. So I hope that you will vote for people up the ballot who value education and are willing to make it a funding priority. We need to do things. There is a fair funding formula. It's very tricky the way that it has to be implemented so that we don't end up taking a huge chunk of money away from the rural schools. But eventually it can balance out some of that disparity between the wealthier school districts and the poorer school districts. I think that right now, Doug had touched on the numbers a little bit. We have Pennsylvania funds about 37% of the cost for education for their students. The typical funding for other states in the United States is 45%. Usually the state kicks in almost half of the cost per student, and Pennsylvania is well below that number. So the state needs to send enough funding to the school districts so that the school districts aren't constantly having to raise property taxes and hit the little guy so hard. There are ideas about eliminating property taxes, but actually in the long run that hurts the poorest people the most, because you have to make up that money somehow, and the most likely way that that money would be made up would be through increased sales taxes. Those increased sales taxes for a middle class family would be about $350 a year, more than what you're currently paying in property taxes. So it seems like it's a good solution, but in the long run, it actually ends up hurting people more. And it makes it so that the school districts don't have as good of an idea of how much funding they're going to get each year.
Time's up, Carrie.
Yep.
Any rebuttal, Ben?
Just one thought on that. The property tax stuff came up a little bit, and property tax is a complicated issue, and it needs to be reformed. And I know Carrie talks often about, $300 and some more a family is not sustainable. I have dairy farmer friends that pay $13,000 a year in property tax. So that's rough for them too. So that's important to just make note of that there are a lot of those that are contributing an amazing amount of money towards that. So.
Okay. Just one minute, real quick. All right, so to address that issue, there are proposals to reduce property taxes for people who are in economically depressed areas. And those proposals would work for the elderly or for people with working farms. So there are ways that could be mitigated.
That concludes the question portion. Each candidate will now have 3 minutes to make a closing statement. Mr. Owlett, how about your 3 minutes?
Like I said in my opening statement, I'm here to listen and be a part of the solution. And I hope that you see that tonight. I'm enjoying working with so many folks, especially those on the panel here, over the last several months, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you as we move forward. I hope that you have seen my humility, creative ideas, and desire for real-life impact in our communities. Just like we saw in Troy this week with the flooding, unity in our community is key. Please take advantage of the open door policy that I have in my office and stop in. The House of Representatives is the people's house. My office is the people's office. No one here has the right answers, all the right answers. But I believe that in this room, with this many people, the right answers are in the room. If we work together and pull in the same direction, we can hand our kids the best education possible. Students in the 68th District can be ready to take on whatever challenges come their way. But if we let partisan politics and a one-size-fits-all approach in Harrisburg prevail, we're all going to suffer, especially our kids. We work really hard every day to make sure that our community is a safe place for our kids, and these guys up here work like crazy for that, and I appreciate it. I really wanted to make sure tonight wasn't a debate, because that's not what we should be taught. We shouldn't be debating education and school safety and funding. We all need it, and our kids need to have a good education, and that's why I wanted to be a part of this, and that's why I'm so thankful for so many people that came to offer, what they're doing, because the community needs to know that we value education and we value our kids. So again, I'm about solutions, and my goal is solutions for a better Pennsylvania and a better community for all of our kids. And I just want to say thanks to the panel. Let's give them a round of applause too.
So Thank you all for being here tonight. In a democracy, it only works if the people are involved, and it's amazing to see this packed room and people standing out in the hallway. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you to Tioga Publishing for hosting, to the homepage for videotaping, and I know we have a representative from the Daily Review here as well. The free press is an incredibly important part of a democracy as well. So very thankful that you're all here. And to each of our panelists, thank you for sharing your expertise tonight and for giving us information on these topics. I can't explain enough how important education is to me. So I'm really incredibly happy that we were able to bring this panel together and to talk about these issues that impact every single member of our community. I hope that you will choose me to represent you in Harrisburg, and I promise that if you do, education will continue to be my #1 priority because I believe it impacts so many other issues throughout the community. So my name is Carrie Heath. I am the Democratic candidate for state representative for the 68th District. My website, Instagram, Facebook, all of that stuff is Heath for PA House. If you're interested in finding out anything more about where I stand on other issues. I know we didn't get to much depth on some of the school safety issues, and I do have some information on that on my website. Or if you'd like to ask other questions, I'll be glad to stay and talk to people afterwards tonight. So thank you all very much, and have a good evening.
How about a nice round of applause for our candidates?
A special thank you to the Wellsboro Gazette for hosting this event. For more information on the candidates, be sure to visit their websites. And thanks for joining us today on the Homepage Network.